In 2010, Temple Grandin was named to Time magazine's 100 most influential people list of that year. Born with autism, Grandin now serves as a professor of animal science at Colorado State University. On Tuesday, she was the 9th speaker of the University of Nebraska-Lincoln's Heuermann Lecture Series. Market Journal's Kurtis Harms reports on Grandin's work in reducing livestock stress and handling and how the industry can effectively communicate with consumers.
Cattle handling was terrible. Absolutely terrible.
Temple Grandin isn't your typical animal scientist. Through her autism, Grandin is able to gain a unique insight into the minds of animals. This knowledge enables her to develop strategies to effectively reduce stress in livestock. Her interest in animal welfare began in the 1970s. Back then, the industry looked a lot different than it does now.
Cattle handling in the 70s was absolutely beyond awful, and cattle handling today is so much better. People have recognized the value of good animal handling, and there's a lot of emphasis today on low-stress handling, and I think that's really a good thing.
Grandin credits much of the improvements in cattle handling to proper education and awareness.
There's been a lot of emphasis put on improving handling. Handling, I would say, is the bright spot. There's still people doing some bad things, like yanking ear tags out of cattle without cutting them first. Unfortunately, somebody in 2012 was caught doing that. That's not okay, but I would say for the most part, handling of cattle, especially in feed yards, and I think on ranches too, people are much more aware of good handling, and that's the bright spot. And the most important thing is keeping them calm. Give them a non-slip floor to stand on, no yelling and screaming. Just doing those two things will make a big difference.
Despite the improvements made in livestock handling, Grandin believes there's room for improvement in animal welfare. Mud, for example, can cause health problems in cattle and can be avoided by developing proper drainage channels. Heat stress is another aspect of the livestock industry that can be improved.
Well, we're raising cattle to bigger weights. People have got to be very careful with beta agonists so that we don't have a problem. And I'm a big believer in using outcome measures. Open mouth panting in cattle when they're at rest in the pen is not acceptable, and you're going to have to take steps to, reduce the heat stress. Larger animals have a more difficult time dissipating the heat.
When it comes to slaughtering plants, Grandin says the United States is doing well in reducing stress in livestock. She says it's important to use outcome measures and record factors such as first shot stunning rates and vocalization scores.
Let's look at outcome measures for handling at the slaughter plant. How many cattle did you stun on the first shot? How many cattle were mooing and bellowing their head off at the slaughter plant? How many animals slipped and fall? When I first started, you might have 5 or 6% of the cattle slipping and falling. Oh, now you got 1 in 2,000 that's falling. There's been a lot of improvements.
Outcome measures can also be used in a ranch or feed yard operation to document factors such as electric prod scores, vocalization, speed, and falling scores. Grandin says the regular scoring of livestock handling can lead to improvements.
Well, I like things that we can measure because let's say, the thing I have found with handling, and I've been involved in this for years, I've gone out and we get a new corral or new system in a plant, all started up, and everything's wonderful, and I come back a year later and the handling has slipped back bad. That's because people weren't measuring it, and they didn't realize. The prod was gradually coming out, more and more, but you measure it, then you can go, well, my prod score went from 2% to 10%, that's not so good. And there's an occasional animal that won't go in that squeeze chute where you might need to use the prod, but then put it away.
Overall, Grandin says livestock handling has improved dramatically over the last few years, and it's important for the industry to communicate positive practices to consumers.
We need to show what we do. And I've taken a lot of people on tours through large meatpacking plants, and they're kind of amazed at how quietly the cattle walk up the chute. This is something where there's really been big improvements, but the problem is people don't know about it. Let's look at things that ranchers here in Nebraska could do. Why don't you make videos of just taking care of calves or, going out and checking on cattle, fixing fences? Because the thing is, what's chores to you is interesting to people in the cities.
For more on Grandin's research relating to animal handling, visit her website at grandin.com. Reporting for Market Journal, I'm Kurtis Harms.